Hey, I'm Matt Manny. Thanks so much for joining me for today's devotional thought. Today we're on day number 7 and we're talking about finding a path for your purpose. If you ask kids, my kids, you ask little kids, you say, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you dream of being? And sometimes kids will say things like they want to be a firefighter, they want to be a ballerina, they want to be an astronaut. They have these big grandiose ideas. But you think about for kids, well, the things we dreamed of, I dreamed of being an NBA basketball player, and well, I can tell you that didn't turn out for me as I thought. But when you think about your purpose for life, and this next series of these next several devotionals, we're going to really talk about how to discover your purpose, your God-given purpose. So we're transitioning from understanding your personality now to discovering the purpose that God's given to you for your life. You think about people that, well, there's average people that we're never going to hear their stories of. We find people that, like a guy by the name of Bert, who really struggled in school, and he was made fun of. His teachers told him that he really wasn't going to go anywhere. They told him that he was lazy. They told him that he was stupid. His parents told him that he wouldn't amount to much because he just didn't have what it took to be in the school system. His teachers voted him the least likely to be able to find a job after graduation. When he went off to finally get into a secondary education institution, the teachers there, well, they couldn't give him a reference because they thought he did the poorest of all his graduating class. He ended up getting a job at a patent office, and so that's kind of where he spent the rest of his days. We have stories like a young single mom who'd just been divorced and now she's trying to raise a child on her own. She's sitting in a coffee shop and she's struggling to make ends meet, doesn't know what to do, and so she sits down and starts writing down some ideas on the back of a napkin. She comes up with a storyline and she sends it out to some publishers, and she gets letter after letter of rejection from 12 different publishers that her idea, well, it's just not going to take off, not going to go anywhere. I think of a guy who was an incredible artist, and he had these massive dreams and all these kind of grandiose ideas, and his competitors, other artists that wanted to see his downfall, well, they set up a scenario that they got him to make a bid on a job that they were pretty sure he was going to fail at. And as it turned out, he really suffered physically from it, and it almost ruined his career and really almost ruined his life. There's story after story like this, story of people who, well, they didn't make the team, they didn't make the cut, they were told they weren't going to amount to anything, they were told that they would never make anything of their lives. I think of people who, well, what we see in the diamond in the rough, well, it's just really not much of a diamond, it's just a lot more rough. And yet in our society today, we have the history of people like our friend Bert, who ended up being Albert Einstein, who came up with the theory of relativity and has a massive impact on our society and our culture and our way of life. The young single mom got divorced and trying to make ends meet. Rejection letter after rejection letter turned out to be J.K. Rowling, who made the most famous of modern day stories of the Harry Potter series. You have a whole theme park now based on what she jotted down on the back of a napkin. That guy who almost lost his life and his health and who was sabotaged by his competitors, that was Michelangelo. The job that was going to be too big for him to do, the Sistine Chapel. When we think of all these different stories, Michael Jordan didn't make the team when he was in high school. Robert Goddard, who came up with the modern rocket, he was laughed at and made fun of in the New York Times for some of his early ideas. And so person after person trying to find their purpose and discover who God created them to be and what God called them to do in this life, well, it was really rough. When we consider our purpose, we find that God has given us this incredible purpose, and that we have these stories of histories of successes that turned out to be unlikely stories how they started. And yet when it comes to finding your fit, let me just read a few words from our devotional for you. In every generation there are outliers, people who are gifted, who discovered God's purpose out of just some crazy circumstances. And your purpose is no less important than any change maker or influencer, any of the people that make it in history, any of the outliers that we talked about just a moment ago. Your purpose is just as important as they are. If you think about your interests, your skills, your passions, your personality, your abilities, if you're a follower of Jesus, your spiritual giftings, all those things come together to make your shape of how God made you. Jesus made the world and everything in it, and most importantly, He made you as well. So when it comes to finding your purpose, when it comes to getting a sense of who God created you to be and what He called you to do, you can find that Jesus doesn't make junk. He didn't make a mistake. You're not broken. It's just a matter of discovering your purpose and finding out what it is that God created you to do. For more encouragement, go to Colossians chapter 1, verses 16 to 18 to study more about this concept of finding your God-given purpose. Thanks so much for watching.